Hi everyone, and welcome to Blame It on Marketing. In this episode, what it's titled, should I say, is Community in the Nav Bar. And the reason we want to call it that is because so many organisations have on their main website nav bar community, but they don't appear to necessarily have a community. So we wanted to get into that with Ben Goodey, who we will let introduce himself in a moment. He's an SEO expert. He's many things. He also does have a community. So Ben, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks for the intro. So I'm Ben. I have a community for SEOs called How the Fuck, which basically started off as a podcast. It actually started off me trying to learn marketing. Like the concept is, how the fuck did you do that? I would get like really crazy growth stories and just like tell them to teach me how they did it. And then it specifically morphed over time to become an SEO community, and it's now like kind of a content hub and a podcast and a paid community. My background's in SaaS, B2B SaaS, the most boring area of marketing, in my opinion.
No,
How
don't say
dare
that.
you?
That's all of us.
It's not sexy, but it pays.
So when we were planning this episode, we are like, oh, we can get Ben to talk about SEO, but then that kind of negates the point. Just go to Ben's podcast and listen to it. He does a much better job there. So then we got onto the topic of, community, because that's essentially what most content creators actually try to build. And then companies try to build communities through content, but kind of nefariously, almost. Not really. They always want a lot back from what they do, and of course Emma is the community builder, so we thought that this was a really, really good topic to go after. I'm gonna just jump right in and ask both of you, what is a community? Is it a platform? Is it a Slack channel? Is it people? How do you know it's one?
I mean, I think lots of people love to think it's the platform or it's the content or it's the thing, but realistically, and again, it's a little bit of a cringy answer, it is the people, and I think the real meaning of community is the fact that you've created something that derives value for the people who are involved, but they also want to be part of it. They want to engage. They want to almost like, without, again, not sounding too cringe, like give back to the people that are within that network or in that group. So I always see it like that. And I think that's, like, I know we're going to get into it, but that's where it gets a bit tricky for me when we talk about community. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the way I see, like if we're talking about kind of business communities specifically, I kind of would try to think about them in exactly the same way like a normal community is. Like in my local town, the community, like it's like a group of people coming together with like a shared kind of interest or like whatever it is, like the beliefs, the characteristics that somehow bond them. And they all want the same thing. Like in my town, it's like they want to live in a great place and they want to have fun and enjoy themselves. And I think probably if more businesses saw their community as that kind of place, it would it's like that shared value. Like everyone's bringing, but they're also getting value for themselves. I think that's how I would think about it. I've been in so many Slack communities, like talking about is it Slack or not, and I think it's quite clear. Maybe we'll get into that later, but quite clear what people do get wrong with those, and what the ones that I've seen are super successful and have so much engagement, approach it in a totally different way. So maybe we can get into that.
Yeah, I agree. It's absolutely, a lot of it is about the value behind it. And then therefore, I'm not saying the rest follows, because I do think one of the big things with communities, you've got to be quite purposeful about building your community out and how you do that. Ben, so you've got a community, and you've got like quite a large following. So how did that kind of start? How did your following start growing, and when did you hit upon the idea that this is more than just a followership and this is more about community?
So the way I've got my following and like built the awareness has always been LinkedIn, which is, I think, having like its renaissance at the moment. Like I think maybe when I started posting on LinkedIn more regularly, that was like 2 years ago, and I felt like I was at the end, like I'd missed the boat on it. And it had all these big people in the industry like Dave Gerhardt or whatever who got really massive followings on there. And I was like, at the end, they were like, the organic reach is over. And I was like, oh, damn. And someone said to me the other day that they felt like that right now, and that I was one of the OG people. And I was like, that's so not true. Yeah. But even at that time, like everyone, I guess, thought that LinkedIn was over. But I actually think right now everyone's moving from Twitter. Like there's more content creators than ever on LinkedIn. Um, and in itself, I think LinkedIn has become a community. Actually, just like all of the LinkedIn people who are personal branding experts all talk to each other. Everyone in SEO all talks to each other. Like where everyone is in the DMs, everyone knows each other. Um, but like that's how I started building the following. And then I guess the idea of it becoming a community, I guess, sort of morphed into, well, it came from, I think, wanting to build much more engagement with the brand, and not wanting to just have people following and then listening to the podcast, but being able to like contribute in some way, like ask listeners questions, for example, is something that is kind of recently launched. And also like the LinkedIn post, it's always the same people in my comments on LinkedIn, so like I do see them talking to each other. And I think just slowly seeing the value of that, like no doubt, like it's progressing into that. Another thing is like when I niched down into SEO, and then like SEO case studies in particular, and like high growth SEO case studies, that became like a very clear focus, I think. And that's when my following started to like take off, was when we had a very clear idea of like what is this guy about, probably, and like what am I trying to do, and why am I trying to bring people together and help them do a certain thing. I think that's when the idea of this could be a community kind of um yeah kind of came up. I would say honestly, it's not like a traditional community. Like we don't have a Slack group. Maybe I will soon, but right now I'm just like it's too much to manage, and grow. But yeah, I think you could say parts of it are very community like.
I like the point you made, Ben, just there, like a little thing of, oh, I don't have a Slack group right now because it's too much to manage. Because I think that's a really key point there. A lot of companies want to have communities, want to build these things, take people off of platform, which is usually like LinkedIn if you already have a following. But I think they don't consider how much work it is to make it good. And you're just talking about Slack channel here. You know, we know people that want to build academies and courses and all of that stuff. And they're like, yeah, let's just do it. And it's like, whoa, this is like a whole human's, maybe two's job. So I like that little distinction you made there. I think people don't think about the actual upfront work that it takes.
100%. We had in the last company I worked for, Customer Gauge. They're like a B2B SaaS company with quite a specific differentiation in the market, and we constantly did like huge events, like most stressful thing to organize in the world. Um, Huge events, and then we had like a kind of so many people interested in one topic. Like there was a podcast, and I think because we were trying to like create a category, it had a very kind of a small but growing following around that idea of what we were trying to change. But even then, like Slack group was perfect for us, but even then we were like, who's going to do this? Like it needs constant work, so we didn't do it. Didn't have the team to do.
And it's not to put people off, but I do think it is a major consideration. It's one of the biggest things that I get into when I talk to anyone about community. Is like, who is going to do this? Because it is like Ruth said, it's either a full-time or even maybe more than one person's job. Because to me, community does extend beyond just the Slack, what goes on in the Slack channel or what goes on in your social. All of those activities, your events, even lots of your content that goes out, all of that is community building. Also, it's the way you use some of your content to drive the feeling of community. So like a newsletter can be community building because depending on the content that you're sharing, you're trying to foster that feeling. And you're trying to encourage people to contribute. So I think, and that is a huge undertaking, but at the same time, it's worth doing. That's what I'm like, don't shy away from it just because it feels like it's a massive job, but do think about it. Recently, one of my clients is hiring, before we build a community, they're hiring someone that they've called, they're called the CEO, but their chief, community a community engagement officer, which I love as a job title because it just sums it up. It's like, the first person that comes in, and they're thinking about hiring more community people down the line, the first person that comes in is all about, from the outset, driving engagement with the members of the community, which I think is awesome. So I guess, Ben, one of the things that you did touch on is stuff about Slack channels in particular, like where stuff goes wrong and stuff, like where it's not right. So where do you think organisations tend to go wrong when it comes to these communities?
Good question. I'm sure there's loads of ways you can go wrong, and it's not easy. So I feel for people, and like the biggest thing I think is that everyone has like quite a short-term view in marketing. Like they want growth and now, so they're like, okay, we'll start a community, and then they won't give it much time basically to work, which means they'll start taking from that community more than they give to that community. The way I see, so the examples I've seen before, and I won't mention the name of the company, but like some very big tech companies started a community in the space I used to be in, and they started, they created all the channels in Slack, like they, made room for people, and then there was no back and forth between people within that community. Like they clearly weren't solving each other's problems. I think that's when it becomes a really good community, is when it fuels itself. Like you shouldn't need 100% a manager there creating the conversation every time, asking, hey, topic of the day, everybody, because people are already coming there for themselves, if that makes sense. Like there was another community that I was in that did this really, really well, where they had this was in customer service. They had all the different customer service providers, Zendesk, help desk, fresh desk, whatever, and then people who were in customer service who were using those technologies would come and be like asking each other, like, how do I fix this, how do I do this thing? And there you just have like a community that's very clearly all logging in, solving each other's problems, sharing how they did it. That one did it really well. The other one just posted about their webinars, about their product launches coming up, and then I just didn't get anything from it. I didn't get any like insights, didn't get anything very interesting, unless I was like, I obviously didn't care about their product. So I would say what people mostly get wrong about communities is trying to commercialize it like in a short-term way, when I think it's much more of like a brand awareness play. I mean, I think it's a brand awareness play, but maybe also it's like a retention play. Like if you've got loads of customers and they're all in there, they can help each other. Like they don't have to contact your customer support, but instead they can like help each other. It's like helps them get like maximize value from your product. Obviously, we're not talking about my community in this. It's like SaaS communities. But yeah, the guy I talked to the founder of the community that I said was failing, in my opinion, and he said his leading metrics was signups. How many people can I get in the door? And he was like freaking out, like I haven't got this many people. I'm like hungry for growth, but like, what's the point when they get in there and it's empty and boring? Like that's yeah. So I wouldn't say that was his fault. I'd say whoever was his boss's fault, or whoever was the growth leader at that company, is setting them the wrong leading metrics, instead of engagement and value and unique interactions, which probably should be your leading metrics of a good community. Sign-ups, follow-ups, followers, etc. Yeah, it's not great.
I think there's always the question of, okay, so we start this community thing, how many demos are we going to get, as a SaaS company? And it's like, it doesn't work like that. But I think we can pull from, obviously, communities aren't new, but like for B2B businesses, building actual engaged communities is not a an area where there's much expertise, I don't think yet. But we can pull from, I think, 2 areas for reference. One is from people that do really well on SEO and organic and building content around the category they want to be in, and then seeing what that means to their business later on, because we were part of a business like that and it was really successful because of that initial investment in something that they couldn't see how that was going to go. But also the other plethora of reference is YouTube and is social media creators, because when way back when we were very young kids, when YouTube started, there was no monetization of YouTube. There was no way to make money of it. There was no sponsorships, no ads, but people built these audiences anyway. And then at some point there was a way to monetize them, and they found a way to monetize them, but it's because the audience already was connected and believed in them as a character, what they did, or whatever it was back in 2009 that people did on YouTube. So it got there. It's just no one ever set out. I think you can't set out to make loads of money off a community and then also do the community really well. They're like internally kind of conflicting metrics and goals.
Yeah. It's the paradox of marketing, I think. Like, marketing needs to make you money, but the best marketing is done if you just take away any idea of making money. It's really, really hard. That's why I think Reddit is the best pinnacle of community, because there is zero personal interest in Reddit. And like, there's a hint of you selling, I used to try so much, but if there's a hint of selling something like my podcast, like instant ban, forever ban, like no questions about it. Really frustrating. Like, I hate the moderators over there, but at the same time, like, for people in that community, they can go there and have a safe space to like get their problems solved at all times. Brands need to kind of take a leaf out of that book.
Yeah, it's not all about selling, and I think that creating that safe space is a real key thing, because I think one of the things that does happen when companies start a community, like you said, Ben, is they expect instant engagement. They're like, yeah, people are going to come in here, they're going to be buzzing about it, and they're going to just talk and they're going to ask questions. That is not how people work. Like, our product director used to say this to me: no one wants to be the first person to dance at a party, right? Like, no one wants to be that person. It's really hard, but you will get that. And there are ways of doing it. So I always think of community, I think rightly, like you said, Ben, I think it's a retention thing. And I think it's also maybe a way to sort of like scale some of your, maybe your customer success function or customer service function through a community. I think that works really, really well. But also it's the advocacy side as well. You know, like, people can go in there, they can, if you can create that safe space, people will ask questions about your product or will ask for advice, and then they will say, you know, actually, have you heard of blah, blah, blah? It's really good. And that, again, is just like making you kind of like a trusted source. But you have to create a space where you can allow that conversation to happen, and you can't, you can engineer that to a certain degree. So like, you as a business could work with your advocates to get them to sort of, you know, engage or have a role in your community. But equally, I think there's a big, in terms of it sort of goes back to the monetization bit as well, Ruta. You know, like, you could work with partners to sort of either sponsor your community or monetize like certain content pieces being created. There's so much opportunity there, but that should not be the starting. The money side should never be the starting point. But it is a long game. One of the like most difficult conversations I have with people is, we started this community 6 months ago. We've got like 1,000 people in it, say, and the conversations still aren't, you know, happening. Or, you know, we started this like 2 years ago and it's kind of dwindled. And then the first question I always ask is, how much resource is there? You know, like, how many people are operating working in your community? And the likelihood is it's like, oh, marketing go in when they have time. And that's always really, really difficult. It's like, yeah, you can't start something like that and then just like leave it to kind of like sit on a shelf.
Fester.
You can't let it fester. You have to be intentional with some of this stuff. Otherwise you won't get the engagement that you want to see. One of the most contentious subjects with community, and I see this a lot on Twitter, because I like join in some of the marketing Twitter conversations that go on and stuff, even though sometimes it gets a little bit. Is social media community? What do you think?
I don't know. Yeah, I think I mean I think it as a whole it is, you know. I don't know if any one account is a community. Like that's why I struggle to like say that I'm a community really from social, from LinkedIn. But the times when I've seen it become a community is when I ask a question and then people in my comments are discussing with each other the right answer or that kind of thing. And I'm like, this is really cool. Like people are actually like learning from each other. And then I'm like, this is a way that like my account could become more community like. But yeah, overall, I'd say like LinkedIn is a community, but it's kind of a network and no one owns that in a way. Like no one owns SEO LinkedIn. It's just like, it is us all talking.
And I think it's okay not to own the community you might have. Like I don't think the value is never in the ownership of it, right? The value is in the existence of it. So if you can nurture it on LinkedIn, that's completely fine. I think that's the other thing with B2B. We're so obsessed with owning the thing, the contacts, the emails, that we then take people, we talk about this a lot or hear about it a lot, taking people off platform. So if someone's on LinkedIn and is engaging with your stuff and like, you know, people are answering each other's questions, why would you want to take them off LinkedIn necessarily? Like you're putting up barriers for them to actually be able to do that. So for me, like if you have a thriving social account, oh my God, that's completely community. And maybe you do want to take them off and give them additional value somewhere else, but then you're going to have to build that additional value somewhere else, right? You can't just do the same thing and expect them to do the same thing they did on LinkedIn on your platform of choice without having some sort of a drop off and effect, right?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I completely agree. I think it's, the thing is you want to make money from it. That's why you want to take them off platform. Like that's sadly the truth. But if you I think that you're right in that is your additional can you make something of value that they go off to and like that's beyond like what they get. I don't know, I think like an SEO specific LinkedIn would be awesome. But then I get ideas from it. I get ideas from all other industries as well. So it's like there's still yet to be an SEO Slack group that I'm part of and really want to be part of. But yeah, I do agree. Like adding value on the platform and building your audience is key to actually building a following and engaged one. And one day you will be able to kind of move them off or sell them an additional thing. But yeah, it's kind of, I think it's a little toxic to be doing this for money at any point. There are loads of other areas to get value.
Yeah, I think social is a huge, I mean, like I say, I think because community is this holistic thing, social's a huge part of that. And I think you're right, Ben, like when you see people talking to each other in the comments, that is absolutely like people are helping each other and supporting each other, which is fundamentally the sort of backbone of any good community, right? So that's yeah, or arguing, fine. And I agree with you that trying to take people off social if there's good conversation seems like a sort of like, it's a pointless exercise. But you're right, Ruta, it's B2B. We all want to own everything, and you know we can't cope unless our logo's all over it and all that stuff. And again, that's where people go wrong, is they'll try and take people off platform. They'll try and take people off social into their own community, but then what generally tends to happen is then all you get is access to that one organization's viewpoint on stuff and the world. And the reason we all use social media in particular is because we want more than just to be able to, like Ben, for example, with your SEO community, I'm sure those people are engaging with that conversation with you, but also engaging with other marketing conversations or other stuff that they're interested in. It's not just this one thing that they go there for. There's other stuff as well, because, you know, we're humans. And it's also nice because it means that other people who might not otherwise engage with a community are, because you could have a really super niche subject like yours, Ben, SEO. Not everyone from a marketing perspective knows much about SEO. Sometimes it can be overwhelming for all of us. And we wouldn't learn about it otherwise unless we followed people like you. So it's making a subject more accessible when it's on a platform, like a medium like social, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I really like what you said about it being like community being holistic as well. When you just see it as just a Slack community, it's like that is just one thing. But if you can actually see yourself as part of like a greater network of like a social account follower or like a content thing or like other people talking to each other, it's like just a topic. If you can see that as your community and you're accelerating it, or you're being a big name in it and want to be known in that community, that can be a big thing as well.
Shall we talk about some ways to get community building right in the B2B world, since we've just shat all over everyone?
At the end of the day, I think not being too, like we said already, like we discussed quite a lot, like stop trying to get really short-term gains from a community. Like think of it as something that you would want to try to build something that you would want, like if you were that customer, would want to be a part of throughout your career, or like that's going to add value to you. As something that you would come to as a resource, basically. And I also then think pick a topic. Like niching down 100% worked, like for me, a really specific problem that gets solved, or serving an underserved group of people who need help. I think that's what brings people together. So like, don't just say we're the community for marketers, like say we're the specific community for like marketers who want to create quality content, and we're going to discuss how to do that and help each other. I think that, and then if you're going to start one, obviously I think Emma probably knows more about how to solve that than me, but like you obviously need to fuel the discussion at the beginning, and get people engaged and kind of lead the way and make people feel comfortable and involved and happy to engage. That's probably my top 3 points.
Yeah, I would agree with all of those, and the couple that I would add is, especially on the engagement stuff at the start, is you have to be quite intentional. You can engineer it. I think you, like I said, if you're a B2B business, you can work with your advocate clients to basically say, actually, we'd really like you to either take on a role in our community, or we'd love it if you could get involved in some way, shape or form. So it starts to foster that, like, this is a two-way street thing. Like, we give you, but you give back, and like, let's do this together. I think that's really important. I think most people, when I do a community plan with them, when I'm like, what are we going to do with your advocates? I think to begin with, they're all a bit like, what the hell's that got to do with this? And I'm like, well, you're going to need those people to get some conversations started. Trust me. It can't always be your team. Obviously, you need to think about how you're going to resource it. Big one. And basically don't do it if you're not going to resource it properly, because, you know, it is a big undertaking.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? I know I'm not the host. But you said, like, I think this is the hardest bit when you describe this, like, oh, we've got 1,000 people in our Slack group and no one's talking. And you mentioned a solution there, like getting community advocates and like kicking off conversations. Like, how do you get an advocate to actually do this for you? Like, do you pay them? Do you just get someone who is like a crazy raving fan who has too much time on their hands? Like, how do you make this happen?
I think it's definitely the latter. I mean, would never go down the route of paying people, not to start with anyway, you know, because that's not, you know, I have very strong views on not bribing advocates. Ruta knows this very well. You know, like, it's nice to say thanks to people, but I'm not paying you and I'm not giving you like bottles of wine up front. You know, like, again, it's just building that community. But there's a way of doing that so that when you build advocates through your business, and that does require, again, a bit of engineering internally as well. But the idea is that those people are not only advocates of your platform because they love what you do, but they actually sort of they contribute back to your business in some way, shape or form. And so when you've got that group of people, and that might be that you have a customer advisory board that your advocates sit on, or whatever it might be, and then you take that group of people and you're working with them constantly to broaden the sort of scope of the work that you would do with those people, and community can obviously form a huge part of that. So you know, if you have an advisory board, for example, which quite a lot of B2B businesses do, going to those people and saying like, we want to do this, these are your peers that are in this community, we would like to know how you would like to support those peers. I mean, that's literally the question, right? And then quite a few of them will say, actually, I can't commit, I haven't got time, whatever. And then there'll be a handful of people who are probably the crazy fans, but we love them, who are like, actually, yeah, I'd be really up for that. And it might even be that you end up doing like some content collaboration with them. It might be that you reach out to partners that you've got to do content collaboration. I mean, literally the options there, I think, are kind of endless. But I think that's a really good way to get conversations started, is to basically have those clients do that. And I think the other thing that a lot of people are really frightened of is clients coming into a community platform or onto your social and basically moaning about how shit your product is, or putting in product requests, or, you know, all of that stuff, and everyone's terrified of it because they're like, we don't want it, it's like really, you know, it's really public and it's really painful. But actually that's a really good way to start a community, because you're sort of teaching people the behavior that you want, which is to have a conversation. And it's always, if people are in there moaning, you can then use that as a forum to sort of solve their challenges and their real problems right now with the product, and then later they may well come back to the community for other stuff. So I wouldn't shy away from that. But lots of people are like, no, I don't want clients in there moaning about the product or like asking for stuff. But I think it's good. What do you think, guys?
Those problems don't exist. So it's not like those problems don't exist, so you can't hide that conversation. I love all of that. Thanks for the answer. Yeah, I completely agree. As a marketer who has leveraged communities in the past, so maybe like the other side of this, I really agree with the content collaboration thing. For a start, like, we knew that like there was this huge community of customer service people. We were a customer service SaaS product, so we would constantly be in that community, like either answering their questions and like helping them and just being that person, or we would be like inviting them on our podcast, and we'd be like then sharing that back in, then be like, hey, this community member came on our podcast, or we'd interview the community, like ask 10 people in there to like give us a quote for something, and then we'd be able to share it back into the community. So it kept it very like we were helping fuel the community, and it was bringing us back kind of awareness as well. And also, as a marketer, like when you have a community of people, so this is kind of off the topic of how to build a community, but when there is a great community there, like, and everyone is complaining about all the challenges they have, like that is the perfect place to get content ideas. And to then we would literally get all the common content ideas every time they came up, write an answer to them in a blog post, and then we would, every time it came up again, comment that blog post, hey, we wrote a whole blog post about this topic, we've already solved this problem for you. And then we'd just be there all the time. And then our competitors started commenting as well with their own solution. And
That's when you know you're doing it right.
Yeah, or at least we've scared them. It might not have worked that well, but no, but overall that really worked for us. Just get awareness, because I think at least it's the same with communities. Like if you are the host of that community, or you are really an active participant in that community, people will at some point be intrigued by who you are and what you do, and they will look at your homepage, and then one day, you know, they will, when they have the problem that your product solves, like they will come and buy it. So, or, you know, come and do a demo with you.
Yeah, if you're part of a community, you know, you're in a community, and this is the thing again, because this goes back to that longevity thing with marketers, right? We're like, we want it quick and dirty, we want it done, we want to see money, or quite a lot of the time, community just isn't that. But if someone think about the people in your community, someone joins, they might, over the lifespan of their career, change jobs maybe like 3 or 4 times. You don't know that the next job they get, they're not going to be the senior decision maker with the budget. But this entire time they've been engaged in your community, they've done all that. I guess it's maybe more thinking about the sort of legacy of your business, perhaps, which I think a lot of people again, forget about because it's not a quick win, but it is certainly a way of, keeping things going in the future. Like when the the chips are down, where it's hard like it is now, don't you want to be the business that was like, actually, we invested in this community, we really kept going, we kept supporting people, we kept showcasing that like we give a shit about people's problems, we're here to help, we want to solve your problems, and we're committed to doing that regardless of the revenue that it generates. I think it's a good news story.
Yeah. And I find it's the same approach to content marketing in general, actually. Like, and everyone wants to extremely like grow extremely quickly, like their search traffic and things like that. But do you want 1,000 blog posts which are really average, or like 100 that were very, very good that will like last with you for like 5 years? And if you do think I'm going to do this business for 10 years, then you probably won't hack it too much at the beginning and then have to redo all your content in 5 years time. I think it's similar vibes to community. Like, what would you do if this was a 10-year project to build like the best like group of people around a problem?
I think the other bit of notes that we made was, what would you do if you weren't in B2B and you were in B2C and you couldn't call someone up and be like, hey, are you interested in what we're doing? Like, what would you do then? Which then you lean towards content and community and actually engaging people on a real level, right? Because you can't get to them any other way.
I was just going to say a really good example of that, and one that I always talk about, is Doc Martens, right? Because obviously Doc Martens brand, huge, everybody loves it, it's B2C. But what they do on their Instagram is they have a hashtag that's basically my Doc Martens, right? And they basically ask their audience to share photos of that. And that is their branding. So that is their whole Instagram, basically most of the time, is them sharing actual photos of people wearing their Doc Martens. Sounds so simple, but everybody loves it, because who doesn't want to be posted on the Doc Martens Instagram channel? And then everyone's, commenting and talking, and like it's usually people doing something cool, or it's someone's little kid dressed up really cool wearing their Doc Martens, and everyone's like, oh, but it really fosters that sense of like, you are part of something, you are part of this big brand, and when you wear them, it says something about you as a person. So I think it's just a really nice, simple example of doing it well from a B2C brand. Sorry, Ben, go on. What were you going to say?
So like on that point, I think that's a really good use of like probably years of brand awareness investment from them as well. Like they've been investing in making their brand cool and building great products and making people want to be like, I'm a Doc Marten wearer. And then their social media leverages that truth to make a community around it, which is, I think it's quite nice.
And the other thing that comes to mind, both to this point and the point, Emma, you made earlier about how to get advocates to be a part of the community, is in general, people love to look good. So if you can make people look good on whatever channel, community, platform that you're on, that you're going to find quite a few people that want to take part, because it's natural human nature, I think, to want to look good and, be respected by your peers and that kind of thing. So that's another thing to think about when you want to get people involved, is how can we make them look good and, place them as an expert or whatever it is that they want to be seen as.
Yeah, that's such a hard. I think I've always wrestled with that, especially in B2B. Like how on earth do you make that look cool? But like, but yeah, I guess you can do it, and I think maybe that's where like in B2B where the people come in, like the who is like your CEO, your founder, like having that kind of brand around the people who work there, and you get like this buzz around like it's cool to be like on social media. Everyone is talking about Gong, so like maybe I should like also share like my wins in Gong, because clearly like Gong is cool now. I don't know, so it's yeah.
To give you a specific example from our experience, so Emma and I have worked in a lot of HR tech, and in general, HR people are not that appreciated by their organizations. So anything that we could do to elevate their profile, so if we could do a blog post for them where they talk about their experience, or if we could shout them out on something or bring them on to talk to something, it elevates their profile so they seem more valuable to their companies and to what they do. So even in that way, it worked really well with our clients basically. So yeah, it goes both for internal and external people.
It sounds really similar to customer support, like the most underappreciated function of the company, and they all feel it. It's like their common thing they bond over is how underappreciated they are, which is so true. But yeah, like I think we had, maybe it by accident, but kind of did that, like just telling their story basically and making them seem like they did great stuff.
I guess we could do final question maybe, Ben. So how can organizations, and I guess even influencers, individuals, start a community if they haven't already got one?
I think I kind of answered this before around like choosing your niche and picking a very specific topic and finding an underserved part of your target customers, like what is it that no one else is doing for them, and then just get them to discuss it and talk about it a lot and advocate for it, and then anyone who's interested, can join your discussion groups on that. I think that's a nice way to start. Like start small with, like, don't have 10 channels, maybe just have one channel, or like a couple of channels about that topic, but then expand, let the community evolve itself, I would say. I like that the most. Like a lot of the times, if you can step out, if you can get very specific about a topic, then the conversation can flow, and then let the community, like, if they keep asking about something else, you can expand and expand and expand. But yeah, I would definitely niche down. That's what I would say. Go for LinkedIn, go for Slack, if you want to, but like maybe kick off with starting writing about a particular angle on your LinkedIn, and if people get engaged and get fired up about that topic and want to learn more, then be like, if you get known for that topic and you get a following in that topic, that's a perfect time to expand to a group somewhere else.
I guess that's our niche within marketing, is the underappreciated marketer.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. We really loved having Ben talk to us about his community and his thoughts on how you might be able to build one and take kind of best practice to B2B specifically. Thank you, Emma, as well. And we hope to see you on another podcast very soon.